Right. Okay, no worries, thanks. I'm going to struggle to get, so I'll be looking for that. Hello, I'm Trish, and I work as Project Officer with the Bounce Back program, which operates across the ranges in the northern part of the state. So the Bounce Back program delivers and promotes broad-scale ecological restoration across the Gawler, Flinders and O'Leary ranges, and it's been operating for over 20 years, and one of the original focus for restoration was the yellow-footed rock wallaby. One of the pest species that we've focused on, not surprisingly, is goats, and we and landholders have removed a lot of goats from this area in that time. Over 100,000 have been removed through aerial operations, and a further 70,000 or so through ground shooting operations with the assistance of Conservation and Wildlife Management. The focus, originally tens of thousands of goats were removed from reserves and through mustering, trapping and shooting, but now we're really in a maintenance program where we're removing smaller amounts of goats with each operation. We're really looking to see, looking at developing an effective tool. We need an effective tool to really assess how we were doing. And so during the 2000s, John McDonald did the early work on this, investigating the effectiveness of browse, form and intensity assessment techniques with perennial plants, and that resulted in a report for the SAL NRM board that Rob Randall was co-author on. And this looked at techniques developed in North America by Keeley and others and applied them to palatable woody shrubs across the ranges. Mark Lethbridge and others then further tested the applicability of these techniques in the Gawlers. And we knew we needed to simplify these techniques a bit further so that they could be undertaken faster and over large areas. So what are the impacts of goat browse in the ranges? It can result in the decline and even the disappearance of palatable perennial plants. A range of species are typically impacted, and these include acacias like deadfinish and mulga, bullock bush, some eremophilous species, Exocarpus, Berseria. There's a whole range of plant types affected. And what happens with shrubs is they're eaten down like this, wrong one, like this Spiridium up here. Oops, I'm still having trouble. Sorry. Oh, well, it's a preview of what I'm going to say. I think I'll leave the pointer out of it. And the bullock bush in the lower right-hand side has had, so with smaller shrubs, goats basically browse from about this height downwards, about 1.2 metres, and smaller shrubs can be eaten right down to the ground, whereas with larger shrubs like this and trees like the bullock bush, black oak, mulga, what you see is the top part of the plant's there, but the bottom part of it's eaten away completely. And on the left-hand side there, in extreme cases where there's been consistent goat pressure, you can get plants, most of the plants are eaten right down to the ground, and there's bare areas around goat camps, and that's a pretty sort of drastic situation where urgent management is needed in that sort of case. So the three main drivers for the development of this tool were firstly the need to guide effective ongoing management across the landscape in a scenario of diminishing resources, and also to demonstrate to funding bodies that control methods were effective in reducing pressure on plants. The requirement that the assessment cover large areas, therefore it had to be quick and easy to carry out, and also not require high levels of expertise, and also the need to provide quick, comprehensible, understandable feedback to land managers on the effectiveness of their goat control. So this required morphing the science into a simple, rapid assessment method, and that the key elements of that really are a frequency approach for individual species, looking at the plant browse structure, at recent intensity of browse, at height classes, and also at absence of herbivore scat. This is another, that's Plastantha stratoflora, another palatable species that's targeted by goats. So just running through this quickly, so the structural form of plants may be either intact, which is pretty obvious, It may be halted, which means that the plant's basically hedged with the live foliage and the dead foliage more or less at the same level around most of the plant. Recovering where the live foliage is clearly growing out from previous damage, and damage where there's been repeated hits and things aren't getting any better. The diameter of the browse stem tips indicates the current severity of browse, and basically we record this data in 4 categories: less than 3 millimetres, sustainable low impact, up to 6 millimetres or more, which indicates major stress to the plant with the possibility that it won't recover. Obviously, we also need to have some idea. It's not just goats that eat plants, certainly though it's probably mostly goats and rabbits that chew off the thicker stems. As a lot of you will be aware, we've got a few indicators of rabbit browse. The browse line's much lower than with goats, and there's also these distinctive oblique cuts on the damaged stems. Things like macropods and sheep usually chew on finer, less than 3 millimetre diameter stems. And we're also doing a quick categorisation of the scat for a metre radius around each plant that we look at. So this is an example of a data sheet, so you can see that there's information collected in those 4 areas: height, class, browse form, browse intensity, and scat. We look to record this sort of data for at least 30 individuals of a couple of palatable species across a hill transect, but at the same time we also collect, as we go along, some data on sort of fewer individuals of other palatable species that might be present. So especially if they're rarer species like Pimelia microcephala or the sandalwood plumbush species Santalum. So this results in the information we can collect allows us to set thresholds in terms of management. If greater than 60% of the individuals are intact or recovering, current management's probably going fairly well. If less than 25% of them are the preferred categories of intact, recovered, then you'd probably look at doing further management. If greater than 50% are severely damaged or they're mostly mature individuals, then that suggests that there's an urgent need for effective goat control. So this is a tool that we're not just using ourselves, but also we're sort of outreaching to landholders with. Now I'm just going to quickly run through an example here for the Bunkers Conservation Reserve in the Flinders. So the 3 sites were chosen in advance, choosing sites that had reasonable accessibility from tracks and weren't too close to water sources. The transects that you can see, the track logs there around the side, 4 are basically worked out in the field. You just choose a reasonable hillside and start walking along it. I'll also say that at this point that while we've done some of this work, we've actually outsourced quite a bit of it to contractors for a number of the properties that we're doing work on, and this particular data was collected and analysed by EcoKnowledge. So you can see that here we've got the browse form summary, and that the plants, the circles in red indicate are for species that are under a fair bit of pressure. So especially at the second site, we've got issues with leafless cherry, Exocarpus, and also the mint bush, Prosanthera stratoflora, and bullet bush might be in a bit of trouble at one of those at that site too. And some species like sandalwood, Santalum, lanceolatum, and I think that should be maybe a cuminatum, I don't know. The quandong are only very rarely seen in those areas, and they may be long gone and may not recover. It's a bit early to tell. This is an example of the scat data, so really here you can see that the goat issues are, not surprisingly, given what we saw on the previous slide, mainly are most significant at site 2, where we've got the higher goat scat recorded. Macropods scats recorded at all the transect areas, and we've got yellow-footed rock wallaby scat collected at a number of sites on this property. And this is the age structure. This is a fairly healthy age structure for most species, except for the dead finish on the left and the sandalwood on the right. Or that's plumbush actually. So those plants again were only probably rarely encountered in the survey, and we're not sure what their long-term situation is. But basically for this property, it's a pretty good report card. the indications are that the goat browse pressure is not too high for most of these species being looked at, and that they're doing a good job. So what we actually get out of this is reports for land managers. This project, this contract work is being funded through an Australian Government National Landcare program called Connecting Community with Rangers Riches. So this is what the front covers of the reports look like, and we've had really good reception to this work. People, or in this case the Bunkers people, said that they found that this assessment was of great value, as it was the first time they felt that they'd got some sort of scientific tick for the long-term pest control work that they'd been doing. So in conclusion, this method, we believe, provides a robust, repeatable assessment of vegetation and browse trends. It very importantly provides landholders with a report card on the effectiveness of their current and long-term control, and an incentive to keep going as well. Clearly demonstrates the benefits of goat management to funding bodies over short time periods of just a few years, which is often what they want. Requires significantly less resources than other assessment methods, and can be learnt with little training and carried out, with a few skilled people by landholders, volunteers and park staff. So, thank you. Oh, and this is just a bit of sheer indulgence. This is Cinder Bellfruit recovering in Volcathona Gammon Ranges National Park, and we've got fantastic mulga recruitment happening there as well.
You did remarkably well on time, which you didn't think you would. Does anyone have any questions for Trish? Yep. I'll just say it's great to actually see some of the impacts and outcomes from the Bounce Back program and from goat removal. So yeah, beautiful talk, well done.
No worries, thanks.
Okay,
I assume
next
somebody's going to get me out of this.
Rob Randall, looking at
Good luck.
rabbits.